Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Marilyn Shannon, and once again, this is Breaking Free, and I'm really delighted to have you all here today to share another special experience with me. I want to say first hello to Amnon.
Hello, Marilyn. Good
Hello,
morning.
Amnon.
Good afternoon.
Yep,
Good
it
morning.
is. How are you?
I'm fine. You?
I'm good. I'm good.
Had a
Glad
good
to be.
week?
Yeah, I'm having a really good week.
Yep.
What about you?
Very good. And nice weather,
Oh, yes.
nice people. Everything is
Absolutely,
just great.
absolutely. It's been wonderful. I had a wonderful weekend too. I spent a lot of parts of the weekend with my children and my grandchildren. So, and if you make friends with me on Facebook, you can see my grandchildren. So just go to Marilyn Shannon on Facebook, and you're going to see my grandchildren all dressed up as pumpkins. It's been fun. So anyway, um, I take this show personally. I really, really do, and I thank God that God has given me the opportunity to be here because I think each and every one of us look at freedom a little differently. What makes one of us freer is not necessarily what's going to make somebody else freer. For you, it might be trying something new to eat, going someplace different. We all experience life differently, but the beauty of life is in the freedom we have to choose how we want to be free. And a while back, I on Facebook saw a story about a family, a young, beautiful, family from the Midwest somewhere who had a kind of conservative family, had two children, and one of their children was born female, but from a very, very early age, did not live or seemed to want to live as a female and was having trouble in life. And this family, instead of being closed to the fact that this child was born a female, started doing some research. And I have to tell you, it kind of just grabbed at my heartstring because I had never been exposed to anything like that, really. The fact that this even happens and people even have a choice. And I was like, wow, if there's this family, can you only imagine how many families are out there that are accepting of a child who they have as a female who wants to be a boy, or vice versa, or whatever? I mean, we're faced with all kinds of choices now, and to be able to make a choice is huge. And our children, I mean, I saw the difference in this kid from being a little girl to being a little boy. And it was like the world just was like handed to this child then, and anything was possible. So at that point, Chris, who works with us, our co-producer and I got together and we started talking about it. And I said, we got to do this. We got to find a family. We got to find a story. We have to find a way to share this. And so Chris went to work and she found Camp 10 Trees, which is extraordinary. And I am really delighted that we have two members of their staff here. We have a volunteer, Pony, and we have their executive director, Sam, and we're going to be talking to them about what they do at Camp 10 Trees. And it's really very interesting. They have 2 weeks a year, and it might have changed since some of the information, but 1 week is devoted to kids who are GLBT, and then they have children who come from families that are GLBT. So that's pretty, and it's an opportunity for these kids to talk to each other and not feel wrong or bad or anything. And they have a tagline. Well, I don't know if it's a tagline, but it's something I saw in their video. It's not just a camp, it's a revolution. And I am really excited to bring them on here and to welcome them and to have them share with us, all about Camp 10 Trees, about themselves, about the movement, about the revolution. Because I think today, part of what we do here, and I don't ever talk this long, but what we do here on Breaking Free is we are creating a freedom revolution, that we are all entitled to live our best life. And so with that, I want to welcome Sam. Hey, Sam.
Hi there. How are you,
I'm
Marilyn?
great. And Pony, how are you?
Great. How are you?
Terrific. I'm so happy you're here. So, with what I just said and with more, I'm sure, I want to ask Sam to take over and share some about himself and then I'm going to ask Pony to share about herself, and then I want us to, share about Camp 10 Trees. And I don't have this look in any special way. So whatever comes up is going to come up. And I also, want to say if any of you out there would like to call in, ask questions, please feel free to do that. You can call in on 919-518-9773. You can Skype in with us at Computers 2K Voice. That's computers, plural, the number 2K Voice. You can chat with us. You can fill in your name in the chat window next to the video and chat with us. I know for some it's sensitive. For others, they're all out there and comfortable. I know I was asking questions of Sam before that I said, "You mean I really can ask that?" And he said, "Sure." Well, let me tell you something. That moment that we asked him some questions, that like changed a huge part of how I would look at things. So feel free to take us up on this. This is an opportunity for us to really learn about each other. So Sam, tell everybody about you.
Sure. I'm actually an East Coaster, like you all. I grew up in rural Virginia, and growing up, I didn't meet another openly gay person until I was 15. That just wasn't a part of my existence growing up. I was vaguely aware that such people existed. I wasn't really convinced of it, though. And so that was a real process for me, and it was hard to sort of come into my own as a young man without being able to look around and see folks I could relate to. And so I think that's one of the greatest gifts of Camp 10 Trees. It gives folks or gives young people the opportunity to see people that they can identify with and emulate and get some guidance from, and also share their gifts with. In college, I was very active in a variety of queer movements, including on my campuses. I went to a Christian college, relatively liberal one, but we did a lot of speaking panels. We put together literary journals. We did things like that as part of our efforts to get out into the community and say, hey, this is who we are. We're not that scary. And that was really, really rewarding. I'm a long-time summer camp person. Back in 2010, I started looking around. I'd been working at the same camp for a while, and I wanted to do something different. And I got online, I started looking up different summer camps, and I found Camp 10 Trees, and I went, well, that's certainly different. And I came out, I volunteered here for 4 years, and then in February, they hired a new executive director, and I applied and had the honor of getting that position.
And when you say queer, I'd always heard the word queer kind of had a negative connotation. It doesn't.
Absolutely. Yeah, as a East Coaster, as a Southerner, that's absolutely the way that I grew up with it. I grew up hearing that's a very negative word. And then when I came out to the West Coast for the first time to volunteer for 10 Trees, everyone was using it. It blew my mind. And I think that's maybe a regional thing. Out here, there's a very strong sense of a queer community. The LGBT community is very much the queer community. And that's not the case across the nation. So thank you so much for pointing that out. You're right. That's a very regional thing.
So it's okay to say queer.
I would say so.
Wow.
Right.
Say that again, Pony.
It depends on who you're saying it to and how you're saying it. It's a word that's been reclaimed in the LGBTQ community, but sometimes people of older generations or certain regions still see it as an insult. So
it's interesting. When you were saying that, I was thinking of. And again, I've never said it like this before, but if you're black, if you're African American, you might call another, black person nigga. But if I went and called somebody nigga, that might not be accepted as readily, but it might be the same as saying queer. It's how you say it.
I think it's different, and I think what I mean by it's different in how you say it, I think it's your intent behind it. If you're saying it as an insult, then of course, but it's not the same as the racial issue as far as I understand in my community. Like if you were to call me queer, like I actually identify that way, and I don't feel like it has to be someone who also identifies as queer calling me that. Part of why I like that term is because it can be used as like a broad kind of umbrella term to talk about the whole community that is not, straight or heterosexual identifying. It can kind of have us all be together as a big queer family. And I also appreciate it because it's something to me that's non-binary. And I don't feel like any other labels really fit my sexuality and identity besides queer. So another reason I like it is it's kind of vague. It means that, I'm not, I don't live a heteronormative lifestyle. I don't identify that way. I don't feel that way. But I don't also have any other really good specific labels to put on who I am.
Well, okay. Well, you speak really well. So let's ask you now. Tell us some things about you.
Okay. My name is Pony. I'm from Austin, Texas, but I've been living in the Seattle area for a while. I'm a kind of a nomadic world traveler kind of person, so I'm a little bit in and out of Seattle. And I'm an artist. I do a lot of different things for work. I work a lot with young people and do, childcare and volunteering, like Camp 10 Trees. It's really important to me. Like, I'm very passionate about working with young people because they have so much potential and they literally are our future. So I get really excited about having positive interactions and with young people and finding ways to create safe spaces for them to express who they are and, have like see the world as unlimited possibilities for them. I found Camp 10 Trees. Actually, I learned about it many years ago when I first came to Seattle, and the first time I volunteered was 4 summers ago. And a friend of mine who owns a restaurant here, who I had worked for in the kitchen of, cooking is another thing that I like to do, called me and said, "We really need people in the kitchen at camp." And I said, "But the deadline's passed." And he said, "Apply anyway." And so I did. And what I expected was to have a fun time. What I didn't expect was to find a family. And I feel that so strongly. Like, this is the most loving and supportive community that I've ever been a part of. And I feel like so blessed to have it in my life. And even more than that, it's such a blessing to see what Camp 10 Trees can create in the lives of the young people who come to spend time with us. And it's giving them, some of them come from really supportive families and communities, and some of them don't. And what really moves me is being able to create a magical experience for young people and to let them know that, like, they are loved and that community is out there for them. And if they're having hard times in their life as a young person who may or may not have, a supportive community or family, like, they can know that support is there and that they have a larger community that loves them and cares about them and that their lives matter and that they're totally worthy and valuable individuals and that however they can express who they are is beautiful and the world, there are people in the world like them.
Sam, what were you going to add?
I think Pony summed it up really, really well. We talk about the magic of camp a lot, and the magic of camp is kind of hard to quantify. It doesn't show up in a daily schedule. It doesn't show up in a planned activity. It's the changes that happen when a young person, or really anyone, has a chance to spend some time in community with supportive folks who say, it's okay to be who you are. Let's challenge you in a supportive and loving way. Let's make some progress together. Let's see where this road goes. And that's the magic of camp.
So I know we don't want to share any specific names or anything, but can you give us some ideas of the kids that are there? Like, I know you have certain ages, but just any kind of stories about any, a child from the past or, anything that, any light bulbs that went off, anything like that you can share. Is that possible? Can you think of something?
Yeah. In an anonymous way, I think so.
Yeah. Do that.
Something that comes to mind for me from this summer is about a camper who was in the area I was working at of camp, and was a kind of a quiet person and came from a rural community. And I really got the sense based on things that person said, and this is a high school student, that they probably felt kind of like an oddball where they came from, and like they didn't really fit in, and they were in a cabin of other young people who really were so supportive of them and really like genuinely loved them, and I'm using they as a singular pronoun there, as a gender neutral pronoun, neither he nor she but they. So anyway, at the end of the week, it was really incredible to hear that person talk. They had really come out of their shell, and they said to their cabin and also to the whole camp at the final campfire that they had never like felt so like that they had never been treated so nicely and been given so many compliments and felt so supportive in their entire lives as they had in that 1 week of camp. And they were very emotional to leave that place because it was clear that it was like just a huge thing for them to feel so loved and supported, and that is something that they hadn't felt their whole lives. And this is someone who was probably at least 16 years old. So that was a really moving thing for me, and that reminded me of why I'm involved in this community.
Just goes to show you how how powerful the heart is. Someone who could, I'm guessing, and I'm also making a little bit of a judgment that could be feeling bad, maybe some anger, resentment, a little bit of stuff. Because when you've been rejected, and you can't fit in or you don't know where to fit in, you get some feelings. But how powerful is the heart that it could break through that in no time? Years of thickness of all that yuck. 16 years, 10 years, whatever, 8 years. That's a long time to be feeling like you just don't know where to go. To how powerful the heart is when love is all there is. So I have lots of questions, but I also wanted to, so 10 trees, what does that mean?
So there's a lot of folklore around where that name came from. I've heard a few different stories. I'm sure Pony has heard some that I haven't. The story I hear most often is that the founders of camp, who were 4 lesbian women with a history in the summer camping industry, who really wanted to create a safe space for LGBT youth and youth from non-traditional families, were influenced in the name by the Kinsey Report, which put out the figure that 1 in 10 people will have a same-sex encounter at some point in their lives. A lot of people quibble with a lot of stuff in the Kinsey Report. There's some methodology issues and whatnot there, but the story here most often is that 10 trees comes from that 1 in 10 figure, and our logo is 10 trees in a circle, one of which is a rainbow.
Ah, gotcha. And how do most, I'm assuming, well, I shouldn't assume. So parents find you, right? Do kids find you?
Sometimes the youth find us too.
Yeah, I was going to say, so how does everybody find you?
It's a great question.
Yeah.
It's not that hard on an internet search if you're looking for that kind of camp experience that supports that certain demographic. Also, we do a lot of outreach, especially in the Seattle area, but also in other areas of the Pacific Northwest and sometimes other parts of the U.S. And then there's a lot of word of mouth. A lot of campers will find out from their friends about camp. And then in the queer community in Seattle, like a lot of people know about camp because they have friends who volunteer, or those are some of the ways. Can you think of anything else?
Absolutely, yeah, and I think that outreach is a huge part of what we do. This summer we went to 17 different regional pride events in Seattle and throughout the state of Washington. We also have some volunteers doing some great work in Chicago right now, some Chicago-based volunteers who have really gone out, and they're doing a lot of outreach events and stuff like that for us. So really, we're happy to go anywhere that's willing to let us talk. And part of the reason we were so excited to join you today is that you're East Coast based, and that's traditionally an area where it's a little harder for us to reach since we're 3 time zones away.
Well, and are there camps or facilities like yours here?
There are a couple others across the country and around the world. We are to the best of my knowledge, the only continuously operating one that focuses on both LGBT youth and youth from non-traditional families. I don't want to make too confident a statement because a lot of programs are popping up here and there, but to the best of my knowledge, we're the only one that does a full week for each of those demographic groups.
Well, and I'm imagining that you would, the better more programs, better. I mean, we want to support each other. So I would think that would be really important. But certainly, when I was reading some materials and listening to the video, you are one of the best in the world. So how many kids can you handle each week?
100 is our capacity, just because of the limits of our site and our what we have capacity to do. About 30 kids will come both weeks, so each summer we serve about 170 youth, 100 at a time for each 2 weeks.
So, and that's your max?
Yes.
We always have a wait list, so there are always more young people who want to come to camp than we actually have space for.
So coming into the East Coast, what would that mean if you already don't have space?
What we'd like to do, we want to increase the availability of our program. We want to bring in folks. It's easy to find us if you're in Seattle. It's easy to find us if you're in King County, Washington. Some of those, well, we definitely want to serve that population. That's a population that needs us. We also know that those rural areas are even more underrepresented, even more underserved.
So
we really want to spread that word, let folks know, hey, we're here, we're willing to work with you, we'd love to get you out to camp. And focusing on expanding our programming is something we were looking at. We would love to add a third week if and when demand and our ability make that possible.
Because I just had a thought when you said the rural areas, I would imagine there's a whole bunch of bullying going on in those rural areas. And this must be one big topic for bullying. And in our, wouldn't you say? Pony?
For sure that comes up, and yeah, I mean, because of the culture and the social climate here in Seattle, it's a little more progressive. There's more acceptance for people who are variant in their sexuality and gender expression than in a lot of other places in our country. So, I have a camper friend who comes from Texas, and it's really great because they, their community is different than the community we have here, which is in general, more accepting. And I think that it's a really huge deal for that young person's life to have Camp Tentries to come to. So we do want to reach out, and we want, and also for volunteers, it's great to have a really diverse group of staff coming in because everyone has something different that they can offer the youth that we serve, and we really love it when we have volunteers from other places. Every year I've been there, we've had people from Australia, people from all over the U.S. and sometimes other countries. So we love having diversity among staff and campers.
And how many staff members do you have?
We have 2 paid staff members year-round. Every summer we train about 90 volunteers.
90? Did you say 90?
Yes, about 65. Sorry.
Go ahead.
About 65 of them are there each week. A lot of folks can't take 2+ weeks off from work. So we train about 90, and we have about 65 on site each week.
Well, that's a great ratio,
Yes.
isn't it? So what do some of these volunteers do? What are some of their jobs? I know Chris is asking, do you have like a psychologist, a therapist? What kinds of staff members, what do they do?
We do have an emotional and behavioral support team. And those are usually people who are mental health professionals or social workers working on that team. We also have medical staff. We usually have a naturopath and sometimes some EMTs who come and are there to be part of camp as well. And then we have, cabin counselors. We have people cooking in the kitchen. We have people teaching archery. We have lifeguards. We have, what else?
Inclusion specialist. We're one of the few camps possibly in the world that can do one-on-one support with any camper that needs it. If their level of special needs is such that they need a one-on-one person to stay with them during the day and help them be successful at camp, we can accommodate that. We also can accommodate a very wide range of food and dietary needs, which is why our kitchen staff is much larger than some others. We might have 6, 8 people on the kitchen staff, whereas other camps might have 1 or 2.
We've definitely had some campers who couldn't go to any other summer camp because no other summer camp would accommodate their dietary needs.
Now,
so,
why would, let me ask you something. So, I mean, I, as a kid, went to sleepaway camp. Is there a relationship between this community and dietary restrictions, or what is the deal with that?
So we have a set of 9 values.
Mm-hmm.
We have a set of 9 core values that are really important to us, and one of those is inclusion. So because we are kind of, everything in camp is created around those values being our kind of collective agreements about what's important, that extends to every part of camp. So we have a emotional behavioral support team to ensure that everyone can be included and have a great experience at camp. And that extends to the kitchen. So we will, go to whatever links we need to feed everyone food that they can, that will nourish them so they can have a great camp experience, because inclusion is so important to us. I think that's the connection I can think of.
Absolutely. Another really strong way that inclusion model shows, or value shows up, is in our campership program. We've been doing this for 14 summers now, and in that time we have never had to turn away a youth for financial reasons. We have a sliding scale tuition, and then if you can't pay the bottom end of that sliding scale, we cover whatever you can't. Last year we gave out over $40,000 to make that happen.
So, okay, I want to get back to the core values of the camp, because I want you to tell us what those are, and why, when you say inclusion, why is food or things like that important to I heard what you said, but I want you to go into a little bit more about taking care of yourself. I guess is part of what I'm hearing, is how important it is to honor all of who you are. If you can't honor what you eat, how can you honor the fact that you're, that what they learn with you is going to stick, So I want you to go into a little bit more detail about that. But before you do that, so how much is tuition for a child, basically?
The sliding scale, the top end of the scale is $1,300, which is the actual cost to us to provide a week of camp for 1 youth. The bottom end of that sliding scale is $455, which is about a third of the cost. But like I said, about 60% of our families can't afford the $455 mark, and we work with them to come up with a solution to get them to camp. Last year, that involved us giving out over $40,000 in campership awards. Wow. We get a lot of kids in foster care. We get a lot of kids coming from very limited means. We get kids coming from far away who their plane ticket is what their family can afford. And by the time they buy that, there's no money left over for tuition. And so going back to that inclusion value, we don't want someone to be excluded from camp because they're a foster kid, or because their family isn't that wealthy, or because they live far away.
So, Sam, I want to ask you something. So growing up and having it be as difficult as it was for you, what is it like to be doing the work you're doing now?
It's incredibly rewarding, and I draw a lot of really strength and inspiration from the courage of our youth, because they come to us and they're 14 and maybe they're the only openly gay youth in their high school. And I look at them, I find that really inspiring. It's hard for me to even imagine that. It's hard for me to wrap my head around that sometimes. And so I look around and I'm inspired every day. And sometimes, in the off season, I'm sitting here in my basement office and it's kind of dark and the temperature is kind of funky and sometimes it smells a little weird. And knowing that I'm part of putting on this incredible production for these youth, this really empowering experience. They're going to come to us for a week or two, and what they learn there is going to equip them to be more confident in themselves and better ambassadors for our entire community the rest of the year. That's really something that keeps me going.
What about you, Pony? What does this do? I mean, when you spoke, it didn't necessarily sound like you had a tough childhood growing up, maybe different. Did you?
Well, I actually, one of the things I think is so impressive about so many of the young people we get to hang out with at camp is their level of self-awareness and the courage they have to express who they are. And I wouldn't say that my childhood was particularly tough in that matter, but I think a lot of that is due to me not being very self-aware about things like my gender identity and my sexuality. I didn't grow up, kind of like what Sam was saying, like I didn't know people who were gay or queer or trans growing up. Those things weren't talked about in my life, in my family. I didn't see those things on TV. Like I just wasn't really exposed to that. And I did always like, you know, I was a happy kid, but I always felt different. And it was something I couldn't really put my finger on, and I didn't understand until I was older. And I think that's kind of what made me able to be a happy kid, was that like that feeling was there, but I didn't really understand it. And so in that sense, it wasn't as much of a struggle for me. But there were things that I learned as a young adult that I began to understand about myself that now looking back, a lot of my childhood makes sense. But I also find so much inspiration in the campers at Camp 10 Trees, because they are so bold and so brave, and to just be who they are in a world that is not quite ready always for who they are and doesn't necessarily support who they are, but they express who they are anyway. And to me, that is so incredibly courageous, and I find a lot of inspiration and motivation in that as well.
I find it wonderful how many of our youth are focused on helping others as well. We have youth who are involved in filmmaking to share, queer filmmaking to share with other youth. We have youth who start gay-straight alliances in their schools, sometimes even in their religious schools. I just find that really impressive, the way that they go out and really go out on a limb, not just for themselves, but for their entire community.
Well, I'm guessing that you have supported them a great deal to have helped given them the you can't give them the courage, but you certainly can help honor and permission in a lot of ways, you know, for these youth to go out there and do these things, you know. How many youths do you think are part of this type of community, that are part of the, you know, the lesbian, gay, the bisexual, trans community? How many kids out there, like in the United States?
I'm not
Is
sure.
there any statistics?
All over the map, really. I've seen as high as 10%. I've seen as low as like 1. I find both of those extremes to be a little implausible. But certainly it's something that a lot of communities are facing their own ways. And as we see more and more acceptance on the national scale, I think we're going to see more and more youth coming out, especially at younger ages.
And also something that is happening more and more and at younger ages is youth expressing non-binary gender and not feeling like they fit in with our binary gender system, which is like you're a boy or a girl or a man or a woman. Like there's so many young people are sharing with their families and communities that they don't fit into that, and they have, you know, they don't identify in either of those ways, and that's happening younger and younger. And I think that, you know, we have a lot to learn from young people about that.
Well, we do, and it's a whole new language.
Mm-hmm.
And as we were talking earlier, you know, I said we were talking about somebody who's trans and just dressing up as a woman or dressing up as a man, but hasn't had the surgery. And I always thought if you were trans, you had surgery. But Sam said no. And I said, well, how do I know? He said, you ask. And I'm like, duh. But I don't know. He just gave me permission to ask.
Well, yeah. What I said was it's okay to ask someone what their pronouns are, or something like that. So I meet in the 10 Trees community, when we meet each other, we might say, "Hi, I'm Sam. I use he/him pronouns, and you are."
Hi, I'm Pony. I use they/them pronouns.
Things like that. I don't need to know about.
No, I understand that. I'm not gonna. Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't walk up to anybody and do that. I would have had to have had some kind of relationship, but just to know that you can get into a conversation with someone, a heart type conversation, to be able to ask, certain questions would be Like I want to know more about you too, Pony, because you say they or them. So let's say,
It's
Yeah,
it's
go
yeah.
there's
ahead,
a. I
go ahead.
kind of want to address something because I feel like it's generally inappropriate to ask anyone about whether or not they've had surgery
Right.
in their private
Right,
areas.
right, right,
So
right.
that is not something you would ask
Right.
someone who
No,
is
I wouldn't ask some. I wouldn't want somebody to say, "Did you have surgery on your boobs?" Either. I
Hmm.
wouldn't do
exactly. It's
that.
just not. It's
Right.
none of your business unless you have a very intimate relationship.
Absolutely. But even then, to be able to make this, to be able to live in a world where things are accepted, the lines that divide us can't be so thick. We have to find a way, respectfully, to understand the word queer, respectfully to be able to have friendships with like you said, these alliances that the kids are doing, gay, straight, or this is important, so that we're not scared of you and you're not scared of me, or I'm not scared of calling Pony they or them, and I don't forget, I don't know, I want to honor that. I don't want to be scared of you. I want to understand you. And the only way we can do that is just like we're doing now, is for you to correct me in a nice, in a, it's not, it's good. It's great that I can talk to you about this and you can talk to me, and that we're going to put this out there so that we can share this stuff, because I want to know. I want to know when you say, is that Pony, they or them. So
Hmm.
I have a, so so you don't consider yourself bisexual?
No. Well, bisexual is about sexuality, and pronoun is about gender. So that's a different thing. Gender is your own personal expression of gender, and sexuality is who you choose to be intimate or romantic with. So
So,
it's a different topic there.
okay.
And
Go ahead. Because this is,
so
go ahead.
yeah,
Thank
different
you.
words.
Thank you.
Um,
Yeah, go
yeah.
ahead.
So I actually like on the topic of gender and gender neutral pronouns. Sometimes I talk about it with color, either to younger people or adults too. And like I get asked, especially by children, are you a boy or a girl? I get asked that a lot, and I never answer either way because I don't feel either way. I'm not either way. So I will say sometimes I'll say, is purple pink or blue?
Mm-hmm.
It's that's one way I can express my gender. It's like, well, okay, I have elements of each, so I'm kind of like a blend, but I'm also my own color, right? So, and then we live in this binary gender system, which is like you're pink or you're blue. But there's a whole lot of, it's a spectrum. There's a whole lot of in between and other, and
Oh, yeah.
all these, like, it's, what's important is to, respect how, someone else's identity. And what you were saying about asking people questions, great questions are about their identity, not their body. It's none of our business what someone chooses to do or not do with their body. So those are the kind of questions that are not appropriate to ask someone who has a different kind of gender expression than you're used to seeing or expecting. But asking about identity is great. That gives someone the opportunity to share what they feel comfortable sharing with you. Asking someone their pronoun is a really respectful way to kind of open up that conversation and show them that you care and respect them as a human being.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing we always introduce ourselves with our pronouns at camp, and we're also like, we understand that people slip up, and if you make a mistake, like, it's not a huge deal, but we respect how other people identify, and so we respect the pronouns that they tell us that they use.
So much of what we talk about has a sexual intimacy kind of attachment to it. When you talk about gay, lesbian, you talk about bi, there's some kind of sexual relationship that is also part of the definition. I is Does that make sense what I'm saying? When you
I
talk,
think so.
okay, so when you talk about uh, someone who, like you, Pony, who does not associate with any gender, how do is help me here, because
Well,
yeah.
I don't associate with our binary gender, which means like I don't identify as a man or woman because I know that that's not who I am. I'm a human. I
Okay.
can give you that. And
Okay.
you know, I feel like my gender is different. Like sometimes some people who are, you know, have similar identities to myself use the word agender, like, you know, which is like you don't really have a gender. Some people use gender variant, gender queer. There's all sorts of ways people identify who just don't feel like they really fit in. And the interesting thing is once you start having conversations about that with people, you realize like how limiting our binary gender system is, because most of the people I know who I've had conversations with this about, they say that, you know, they start talking about, you know, it could be someone who identifies as a woman, but who starts talking about how they feel masculine in certain ways. And it just kind of, once we start opening up those conversations, it's really great because we can all connect on the level that like that system's really limiting. Like the expectations we have about like what makes a woman or what makes a man limit all of us, every single one of us. It doesn't.
Absolutely,
There's
because
no
we're
one who's not
right.
affected by that.
Well, you know,
And we're
yeah.
seeing more and more youth who buy into these ideas. I get a lot of calls, really a surprising number of calls from other youth groups around the country, going, "Hey, we just had 2 kids sign up, and they don't identify as either male or female. We know you all work with a lot of kids like that. Like, what do we do? Help us out here." And it's really exciting to hear that kind of energy percolating through all these different youth systems. And it's an honor that folks are looking to Tin Trees as a resource for helping
Right.
out those youth and really
Yeah.
serving them in a way that works for them.
Absolutely. I think that's one of your um, tickets to marketing yourself is in
Well,
educating and being like, you know, having the two of you out here and being so eloquent and so clear about how you are communicating this, because that's what's, I mean, you got to educate people. You know, it's really important. I mean, even so, you know, you're talking about not associating with a gender. I mean, when you talk about that, it makes perfect sense to me because I'm thinking of a soul, and a soul is does not. I don't think souls necessarily are gender.
I agree. I think the soul has no gender and that we have bodies. Well, gender is a social construct. So your physical sex is something that you're born with, um, and your our gender is something that we construct socially. So everything that we think of as, you know, a man or woman are things that we've kind of created and made these societal agreements on. And yeah, so I think like at our essence, at our core, like we don't have a gender, and that's all out here. Our sex is here on our body. Everything out here that we're putting on our body and expressing is our gender. But like what I agree that like inside, like we don't have that, you know, that like
That's what makes
if
us
you
one, you know, and all connected. So, um, ooh, there's so many things that I want to ask you, and thank you for, you know, for doing this. So when you teaching, you know, besides the camp part, what are those programs that, I mean, I would imagine some of the kids coming, they don't even have the vocabulary either. You know, then so what are some of the programs that you teach these kids?
So we do a lot of the standard summer camp stuff. At our heart and
Right,
soul, we're a summer
right,
camp.
right.
So we do archery, we do boating, we do swimming, we do arts and crafts, we do nature walks. We also do a lot of social justice programming, and that looks a lot of different ways. Some of it is very educational. Here are some systemic methods of oppression or models of oppression out in the world. Here's the way they intersect. Here's the way that racism and homophobia can intersect, for instance. We also do a lot of work to empower youth. We've done workshops on starting GSAs, gay straight alliances. We've done workshops on understanding gender. We've done really anything that the youth are asking us for. When youth come to camp, they really get to customize their own experience through the camp process. So for instance, we might have a discussion group time marked off during the day. And that discussion group, those discussion group options could include everything from let's talk about self-harm to let's talk about supporting friends in crisis to starting gay straight alliances to I really don't want to talk today. Can we just go play some kickball on the backfield?
Hmm.
being dive bombed by a fly. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. That's why not? Really? Why not? Um, Pony, Chris is asking on the chat because we have all these things going on. She asked this question: how did you come to realize that that you identify as something as neither exclusively male or female? How did you come to that realization?
That's a great question, and also kind of a tough answer. It's not like it wasn't like a aha moment. It's been like a process, a kind of a lifelong process, right? Like I mentioned before, I didn't have much awareness around it in my youth. But towards the end of my youth and my, like adult days, the end of my youth, that sounds so final. As I was getting older, we'll just say that, I've come to more and more awareness and understanding, and it's just the process of getting to know myself better. It's like as simple and complex as that, It takes a long time to really get to know yourself well, and it takes work. And as I've done a lot of like self-work, I just come into more awareness of myself, and I've gotten to know myself as, my own unique being, and that doesn't fit into this system that's so black and white.
One of the really cool activities we do at camp sometimes, I've actually done it in some other settings, is called gender mapping. And it's I don't know if I can do it justice in 30 seconds, but basically you hand someone a piece of paper, you hand them some pencils or some markers, and you tell them, draw the history of your gender. Which sounds really big and really scary, and scared the bejeebers out of me the first time I was asked to do it. And I looked at this paper for a while, I started doodling things, and it just started flowing. And I got all these ideas out on the paper, and I mean, I identify as male, I was born in a male body, I don't think anyone's ever really questioned that about me. But even as someone who's not transgendered, it was just incredible to get these ideas out on paper and look at them. And the things that I uncovered about myself during that hour were really, those are things that really stuck with me. So that's one of the things we do at camp. And I think Pony was sort of alluding to sort of the ongoing gender map in their head.
Exactly, yeah. And if you think of a map, it's like, it's a bunch of places and a bunch of in-betweens in those places. And so like a gender map is like, you can think of like certain instances that you feel like have contributed to your identity, be that your gender identity or your sexual identity or whatever. There are all sorts of different parts of our identity that we can explore in this kind of mapping activity. But the idea is to just like kind of spend some time reflecting on moments when you either have like a little bit of an aha, or something happened and you felt a certain way about it, or something made you realize something about yourself, or someone tried to impose like a gender norm on you and it really didn't feel good, and then you knew at that point that like something about that didn't work for you. Like it's an opportunity to kind of think about how we have so many of those moments in our lives, and then we have all the in-between moments that hold it all together. And yeah, so it really is a process for everyone. And no matter whether you identify as someone who is gender variant, gender queer, gender fluid, like it's a great thing for everyone to think about, and to think about your own identity and how the gender binary system does or doesn't work for you,
Right.
And how it limits us, and maybe the positive parts about it too. But
Well, I can see your camp being certainly one that is constantly evolving, because you're constantly being faced with, oh, really? That's a whole nother, that's another way of expressing this. Somebody doing something, a kid feeling this way, or families or whatever. So you're always going to be coming up with these incredible ways of practicing. Do you work with a therapist yourselves as far as how the programs are put together? Or, Sam, are you a therapist? How does that work?
No, I'm not a therapist. We have an incredible wealth of knowledge in our community. We have people who are incredibly skilled from a summer camp perspective, from a working with youth perspective, from a mental health perspective, from a social justice perspective, from an LGBT awareness perspective.
Okay.
And we put all those voices together, and that's how we come up with our programming.
That's great.
We also listen very strongly to what our youth want. We have a group called Team Pegasus that is a group of our campers who meet throughout the year, and they tell us, hey, this really was awesome at camp. Hey, this really wasn't so awesome at camp. And so their feedback is really, really valuable to us as we start the process of coming up with each year's schedule, programming, staff training, etc.
Do you have staff that are not part of the community, that are straight?
We do.
Yeah, because I mean, we have an entire week of camp dedicated to youth from LGBT families.
Right.
And so some of those youth identify as LGBT, some of them don't. And so we do have straight identified, non-transgendered, cisgendered staff members and or volunteers. We would like, frankly, to have that's one of our underrepresented groups. We are trying to attract more volunteers from who grew up in LGBT families, more trans feminine folks, more people of color, because those are areas where we look around camp, our volunteer base doesn't match our camper base. But yes, we absolutely do have heterosexual volunteers.
Yeah, we really didn't. I don't feel like I spoke enough about the kids from the families. That I think is a whole nother show. You know, we've spoken about the camp and a lot about, you know, this kind of awareness of some of the terminology and some of your experiences. But I think I would love to have you come back again if you're willing, and to kind of get into it a little bit more even. Because I think the kids from the families I experience, I've worked with kids who have, you know, a gay father. You know, his parents were the parents were married, and all of a sudden the father came out, and great parents, great working relationship. You know, I mean, the mother was on the East Coast, the father was on the West Coast. The father was gay. The daughter was in high school. She'd call her father at night. She lived here on the East Coast. She'd call her father at night instead of her mother to tell him where she was, because it was 3 hours earlier. And they figured out how to work together. I thought that was brilliant. Brilliant.
Yeah, going back to the inclusion value, I think we believe that all people, especially all youth, deserve a place where they can feel safe and find community. So those youth from LGBT families might face bullying because of it. They might have some frustrations around it. Maybe, you know, certainly it's very understandable. I spent 15 years growing up. I had this nice, normal, stable family. All of a sudden, parent comes out. That can throw anyone a curveball. And so part of what's great about camp is it gives them a chance to, in a really non-judgmental, safe space with folks who have gone through that as well, say like, hey, it's really frustrating. I love my dad, and gosh, you know, I'm really having some feelings about the fact that he just came out as gay. Like, what the heck? And so creating that safe space to have those conversations is really important.
I've known a lot of adults, and men especially, who are into being teenagers and young adults whose fathers come out. And it's really interesting I saw it as a young teenage girl myself, and it was very interesting to watch how it was handled. You know, it was, you know, you look at the person, you go, they haven't really changed, you know, but it's been very interesting. Exactly. Oh, there's so much to talk about, but I do want you to talk a little bit more about what do you need from the public? Because we've got about 5 minutes left, and I want you to do some heartfelt, bodacious marketing.
Marketing's kind of an interesting word to use for a nonprofit. But,
yeah, but you know something funny? I took a long time ago, worked for nonprofits, with nonprofits, and I remember like a big investment company did a workshop for these nonprofits and said to them, if you don't act like a business and treat yourself like a business, you won't be around forever. So you've got to raise money and you've got to do things so go right ahead. This is your moment.
Well, only about a third of our income each year comes from camp tuition because we do so many camperships and that kind of thing. So we do a lot of fundraising throughout the year. If you go to our website, which is camp10trees.org, you can get all kinds of information there. You can find out how to volunteer either during the summer. Like I said, we're going to bring on 90-some volunteers this summer. We're always trying to recruit more, widen that pool. You can find our Amazon wish list. It's a list of items off of Amazon that we need in order to make camp happen. Some of that's very summer-based. We had folks around the world buy us over $3,000 worth of stuff off that Amazon wish list for to make camp happen last summer. But there's also stuff year-round. It's a really great feeling to know exactly what you're getting for camp.
Yeah, like I bought the lanyards for this year's camp session, or
exactly.
It's a fun way to support camp, because then you can support it in a way that you want to think about how much fun those campers are having doing whatever activity that you bought the supplies for. That's a really fun way to support camp. Donating, just financial, like we get all our money by donations. So because we include every camper, even whether or not their family can pay, it's so important. So that's a great way, and you can know that like you could be part of making such a huge difference in the lives of these young people. And what other ways can you support camp? If you're in the Seattle area, there are year-round volunteer opportunities.
Absolutely. There's always work to be done in the office. Like I said, with 2 paid staff members, there's definitely a lot of stuff that we rely on volunteers like Pony to help us out with throughout the year. And if you're out of the area, we'd love to talk with you, see what you might be able to do, whether that's someone who would be a great volunteer, whether that you'd be interested in going to an outreach event and talking about camp. We'd love to have a conversation with you, find something that'll work out.
Yeah, and it's like I was saying, it's like these young people are our future. So the experience we're creating for them, they will carry with them for the rest of their lives. And that has like a ripple effect. Everyone that they interact with, they can maybe touch someone else's life because they've had this incredible experience. So it's really like, it is a huge contribution. Right. Even if your contribution is, if you want to donate money or buy something off the wish list, even if that's small, it's like it's making a huge difference, because it's all part of this, this very far out program.
This identity is not going anywhere. It is our future. I mean, we can try to hide all we want, but it's our future. And I'm in North Carolina, and I'm not. I mean, we did a show maybe a year or two ago when they were doing this whole thing about Amendment 1, and they weren't, they didn't pass it, and how can anybody tell you who to love and all this kind of stuff. And now, in no time, because there was this whole conversation here about people won't want to come here anymore. There's so many people that are creative won't want to come here anymore if they can't, live in love with whomever they want to live with. And now they had no choice. They had no choice. We now have same-sex marriage. So things are changing. And I'm a hopeful person. I believe in change. And so this is our future. So in more than one way, we really need to understand it. And seriously, when I saw the picture of that child and how happy that child became from, just being recognized as just having been plopped in the wrong gender, and then to be acknowledged, as a little boy as opposed to a little girl finally, and I'm like, wow, it gave me the chills. I just was like in love with this family. So, I think it's really, what we're doing is important, and I really thank you both very, very much for, being willing to be so open and share, and I would love to ask you to come back.
I'm happy to chat with Chris, and
okay.
We can certainly have that conversation. I really appreciate you giving us the time today to talk a little bit about camp, and thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Go ahead. What were you going to say, Pony?
Oh, I just was saying thank you for having this experience with us. Thanks for listening and for broadcasting this for other people to hear and maybe be a part of Camp Century.
Well, one of the most amazing things is you never know what's going to happen. I mean, we put this out there, and then we put it on YouTube, and we share it, and amazing things happen. It could be, one person sees it from someplace, and we've had that happen. We've had people write us on Facebook thanking us for the connection for something, a private message, but whatever, and somebody's going to see this and say, I have a friend, or I have a child, I have a daughter, I have a son. I know somebody that needs to see this, and we put it out there, and we put it out there in a really beautiful way. So I do want to thank you for being here, and we will, if it's okay with you, we'll be in touch, and maybe have you come back and grow the conversation even more, because we want to educate people, because that's part of the freedom part. That's a huge piece of freedom, is being educated. I mean, if I don't know, I certainly can't be free.
Absolutely. We're all learning. I think where I was when I came to camp back in 2010, there was a lot of concepts that were just completely new to me. I'd grown up in the South. There were just things that I'd never been exposed to. I'd never been exposed to, and it was really fulfilling and great to come see that and be part of it.
Totally profound. So we're out of time, actually, but do you have just one closing statement, Pony, that you want to make?
A closing statement. Just respect and love each other. This life is short.
Yes,
the more you can open yourself up and listen to other people and then treat them with respect, that makes the world a better place.
Yes. Thank you for that. And Sam, what about you?
I guess I would do some shameless marketing and encourage folks
Go right
to
ahead. In the true sense of an executive director.
Yeah, check out our website. Give us a call. We'd love to be in touch. If you think that if anything that we said today intrigued you, then we'd love to talk about having you as part of our community. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you both so very much. And thank you everyone out there for listening today. Share this. Share the link. I'm going to post it all over. It'll be in the show notes. It's on MarilynShannon.com. Share it, and if you know anybody, just pass it. Just pass it. That's the best we can do. All of these things are in our hands. So thank you very much for being here today, and we will see you next week. I'm Nan. Toodles. Bye. Bye. Thank you.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. Our weekly lineup of call-in programs includes Computers 2K Now with Amnon Nissan, Health In with Debbie Bruck, Breaking Free with Marilyn Shannon, Lessons of Vietnam with NCVVI members, The Tanya Love Show, Your Healthy Pet with Gisela DiCarlo. And if you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it at www.nissancommunications.com. Sponsored by Atomus.com, makers of quality video recorders and converters for professionals, CarolinaApparel.com, and DeltaForce.net.